From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Hi everybody, a little close quarters this time. My name is Doug Mintline. I'm bringing you this episode of Bayview Town of Lake Captains, courtesy the historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. We're at the home right now of James Leisk, who lived right next door to his brother John Leisk. The Leisk brothers were from Scotland, where they sailed the world's oceans on the greatest ships before they ever came to Bayview. James Leisk is my personal favorite of all the captains. He sailed clipper ships from England to Hong Kong and back. Climbed the rigging in bare feet to let the sails out and bring them back in again. A real legend, James Leisk. So you're going to learn about more here coming up in our narration from Simon Stanhope. Hope you enjoy it. James Leisk, again, my favorite captain. He had it all. He sailed the world on clipper ships. He took many ships out to records in the lakes. He was the greatest. And he lived here amongst us in Bayview, Wisconsin. Have a nice day, and remember, hats off to our Bayview Lake Captains. Bye-bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of Lake Captain's homes in Bay View to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain James Leisk, who lived on Burrell Street. When it comes to maritime tradition and that of the sea, Captain James Leisk was and is one of Bay View's most celebrated examples. He was born on the Shetland Islands in the North Sea, 75 miles northeast of Scotland, on the 7th of April, 1849. His father, also a sailor, drowned in the Atlantic Ocean near the island of Barra, off the northwest coast of Scotland, when James was a boy. James had 3 brothers, Henry, John and Thomas, all of whom became lake captains after immigrating to Milwaukee. While Henry remained a lake captain in Milwaukee for his entire life, James, Thomas and John all became lake captains in Bay View. James grew up from the beginning as a sailor, and an Atlantic Ocean sailor at that. He is first recorded as being, quote, an apprentice on ocean-going vessels out of Sunderland, England, unquote, which is located on the northeast coast, near the Scottish border on the North Sea. He sailed frequently from Sunderland to the Mediterranean and South China Seas. These early sailing ships he served on include the clipper ship Evelyn, shown here on the left, from 1867 to early 1868, the brigantine Spring Flower, of which there was no photo discovered, for the remainder of 1868, and the clipper ship Belted Will in 1869 and 70, here at right. Clipper ships were and are one of the most beautiful and admired sailing ship designs in world maritime history. Noted for their speed, they were the pinnacle, the high watermark in the age of sail. 2 written performance evaluations about James Leisk while sailing as a crewman aboard the Evelyn show that his character, ability and conduct were rated, quote, very good, unquote, and that he had, quote, very sober habits, unquote. This latter comment provides a window into the past when grog and rum were the sailor's watchword. His voyages on the Evelyn were all to Algiers, on the North African coast. His trips aboard the Belted Will, from 1869 to 1870, were to bring tea back to England. Destinations were Macau and Hong Kong. On one of the voyages, the total amount of tea carried was £1 million. As your narrator, speaking to you from England, I can confirm to all of you good people watching and listening across the pond in Bay View, Wisconsin, that it's true. We British really do love our tea. As a crewman on all 3 of these ships, James Leisk would have certainly climbed rigging on the masts out onto the yardarms in bare feet to both release and pull in the heavy canvas sails by hand, even during storms. In fact, the captain of the Belted Will noted in his logbook on one of the voyages from London to Hong Kong that the ship made good speed while sailing through a monsoon. The calluses James would have developed on his hands and feet from pulling and standing on ropes during this time would have been substantial, a trademark in the days of sail of a sailor that had earned his keep. Upon immigrating to America in 1871, most likely through Quebec City, Canada, as many at the time did, James made his way down to Buffalo, New York, where he boarded the schooner C.G. Breed, bound for Milwaukee. Because of his later personal connection with the Breed's captain, and that he joined the schooner as a crewman the very next year, it's likely that James helped as a crewman during the passage across 4 of the Great Lakes to his new home of Milwaukee and Bay View. The schooner C.G. Breed, of which no photo was discovered, was captained on this trip by what would become his future brother-in-law, William Jameson, who had married one of the daughters of Milwaukee pioneer Daniel Tench. James Leisk would later marry another of Tench's daughters in just a few years, in 1878. After arriving in Milwaukee in 1871, James's first home was in the 3rd Ward, where he embarked upon what would become a whirlwind of service on many different sailing ships, as he literally worked his way up through the ranks. By doing so, he added to his experience in Great Lakes sailing. Then, when the time was right, he was selected as a lake captain. It all began as he signed on to remain as second mate on the Breed for the entire 1872 sailing season. After the first half of the next year, 1873, he became mate on the scow Christie, and the second half of 1873, the schooner J.O. Thayer, his position aboard unknown. Starting in 1874, he served, quote, several years in various capacities on different vessels, unquote, though his exact position aboard is unknown, as are the names of these ships, through 1876. Then, in 1877, he sailed on the schooner George C. Houghton, though again his position aboard is unknown. In 1878–79, he became mate on the schooner Red, White and Blue. It's recorded as having delivered a cargo of old rails to the Bay View rolling mill during his time aboard. James then moved over as mate of the schooner George W. Davis in the spring of 1880, and then took over as captain when its captain became ill that spring. The second half of 1880 he achieved his goal. He was named captain of the schooner W.H. Rounds, his first official command. Next, from 1881 to 83, he was captain of the schooner Narragansett, and then from 1884 to 85, captain of the schooner G.C. Tromph, renamed the Arthur in 1885. He transported cobblestones in both the Narragansett and G.C. Tromph to be put between the tracks of Milwaukee's streetcar system. Captaining the Narragansett in November 1882, he described to reporters about losing a cargo of lumber ties overboard during a storm and rescuing a crewman that had fallen overboard. James's brother John later became owner of the Narragansett for several years, even captaining it for one. It is also believed that John Leisk contracted out the captaining job of the Narragansett for 2 years to fellow Bayview Lake captain and neighbour John Broch, who then drowned when a storm forced the Narragansett onto rocks in northern Lake Huron. In 1886, while still captain of the schooner Arthur, Captain James Leisk moved to Bayview for the first time, at 2451 South Burrell Street, shown here. He would live at this address for the next 5 years, through 1891. Interestingly, 2 years later, in 1888, his brother and fellow Bayview Lake captain John Leisk moved in literally right next door to James at 2455 South Burrell Street. The ships they both captained while they lived next door to each other are also shown and will be discussed in greater detail next. In 1888, James Leisk of Burrell Street transitioned for the first time from sail, while captaining the schooner Arthur, to steam when he was selected to be the first ever captain of the brand-new wooden-hulled steamship Helena. He continued as the Helena's captain for the next 3 years, through 1891, all the while living in Bayview. A little over 2 weeks later, on its maiden voyage on Sunday 12th of August 1888, the Helena, with James Leisk as its captain, carried the largest grain cargo ever on a wooden-hulled ship in Great Lakes history, from Milwaukee to Buffalo. On its return trip back to Milwaukee, the Helena set another Great Lakes record when it carried the largest cargo of coal ever by a wooden-hulled ship. Both of these records were set in 1 week, while James Leisk lived on Burrell Street in Bayview. In 1892, James left Bayview for the west side of Milwaukee, moving in with brother and fellow lake captain Henry. James would have several different addresses here through 1909, remaining with both his family and brother Henry at each of them. During this period, James was captain of the following ships, all steam-powered: the Helena, continuing on through 1899 from his time captaining it in Bayview; the Empire City, 1900–04, the Superior City, 1905, the Simon J. Murphy, 1905, and the Henry H. Rogers, 1906–08. Captain James Leisk died on 27th of January 1909 from complications associated with gallstone removal surgery. He had spent a total of 38 years on the lakes, 30 of that as a lake captain. This doesn't include 3 more and probably 5 more years before immigrating from Scotland, where he literally sailed the world's oceans and seas on the most magnificent sailing ships ever, the famous clipper ships. James Leisk epitomized the greatest in world history when it came to the tradition of the sea. The man had some serious bragging rights. He'd done it all. Picture in your mind an image of a quintessential sea captain at the helm of a sailing ship. That would be him. That would be James Leisk, one of Bayview's greats. Notably, he also made the transition as lake captain from sailing ships to steamships, and major ones at that. When he died, newspapers in Detroit and Buffalo reported that, quote, he was one of the best-known and most successful captains on the lakes, unquote. Years earlier, a Buffalo newspaper reported, quote, Captain Leisk is a careful, competent, and gentlemanly master whose experience of upwards of 30 years on the lakes has been characterized by freedom from serious mishap, unquote. Most of his later sailing had been done under the employ of the Pittsburgh Steamship Company, abbreviated as PSC, since the company's inception. So highly was James Leisk regarded by the PSC's owners that he had been selected to bring out 2 brand-new steamships, the Helena, as previously discussed, and later the 600-foot-long H.H. Rogers, which in 1906, under his command, though he was no longer living in Bayview, carried the largest cargo of any kind in Great Lakes history at that time, of 13,333 gross tons. James Leisk had also been very active in several maritime organizations. These included being elected the first ever president of the Milwaukee branch of the International Shipmasters Association, abbreviated as ISMA, second Grand Vice President of the Great Lakes-wide Grand Lodge, and president of the Milwaukee branch of the Shipmasters Excelsior Marine Benevolent Association, which paid out $11,000 to families of lake captains that lost their lives on the lakes during 1892 alone. Captain James and Mattie Leisk had 5 children together, 3 girls, Anna, Christina, and Mary, and 2 boys, Daniel and Henry. Daughter Christina died in 1905, just 21, causes unknown. Youngest son, Henry, who went by Harry, would follow James into the sailing profession, himself becoming a Great Lakes ship captain, and also president of the Milwaukee branch of the International Shipmasters Association, making James and Harry Leisk the only father and son to both be president of the association. James and Mattie were very active in the circuit of cinch card games, the rage of the day. They both hosted games and attended those held in homes of friends, and at the club quarters of the Milwaukee branch of the ISMA. Other Bayview captains were also documented to be cinch players over the years. We'll be presenting a separate episode on the card game of cinch and its connection with Bayview's lake captains in a future episode on this channel. After James died, his wife Mattie lived on and was extremely active for another 47 years. She graduated from Downer College in 1927, at age 71, and was also very active in various community organizations, to include the Bethany Presbyterian Church, the Whist Club, secretary of the Elector Chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star, a charitable organization affiliated with the Masonic Temple, and the Business and Professional Women's Club, where she was the subject of a feature article in the Milwaukee Sentinel newspaper, and where her and James's daughter Anna was the organisation's second president and served 2 terms. Mattie died in 1956, at the age of 100. She and James are buried together with children Anna, Henry and Christina at Forest Home Cemetery. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. In addition, this channel and its matching website also plan to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to donate to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider donating to us through the listings shown next. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. That is the only surviving intact ship once captained by at least 2 and likely 3 different Bayview lake captains. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.